I used to think that climate change was over here, population was over here, maybe poverty eradication was over here. And now I'm starting to see that they're really all one big issue, and they're interrelated, they're braided together.
The challenge of climate change is that it is really this global problem that demands long-term solutions, that requires many people committing themselves to being involved across many different cultures and communities.
Today's generation is really unique. Someone who is 18 years old today or 20 years old has heard about climate change, global issues. They're trying to find a place in the universe themselves. They are questioning the status quo that has been going on for a while, saying enough is enough. We need to make the world a better place, and I'm willing to walk the talk.
Hi there, I'm Kevin. Brian, nice to meet you.
My husband, JP, was a student at the University of Colorado in the 1980s. And he, like many other students at CU, got to hear Al Bartlett give his talk on population.
Now, some of these problems are local, some are national, some are global.
He credits that talk as one of the things that when we were, married and young and had our first son, that he said, I'd really like for us to talk about just really only having 2 biological kids. Talking about population can make a difference. I think that for young women living in America today or in Colorado, stepping into adulthood, it's about these big choices. Big choices like, am I going to accept a job that requires a 1-hour commute? Am I going to have 1 or 2 children biologically and maybe adopt or foster more kids? These are big choices that are going to lock us into levels of consumption that we're going to pretty much play out for maybe decades, maybe our whole lives. I think part of this is like changing the culture of reproduction, of how we get together as couples and decide to have kids. What I do is I use theater as a tool for social justice issues. And primarily I use it for women, so that women can start to get a feel for their voices as being strong. Primarily it's for women who are living in oppression, maybe women who have been living in poverty, and for them to get a strong voice so that they can start to participate in public decision making. Because without a voice, without confidence to use your voice, you can't participate.
So what Nina's going to do is she's going to sit down with you guys and interview you, ask you some questions about your energy use and everything.
I teach here at the University of Colorado Boulder. I'm in the classroom with a number of bright undergraduate students.
So which rooms are the coldest or hardest to keep?
What strikes me nowadays, is that these students have been born into a world largely where this issue of climate change was already on the public agenda.
The main door that lets in a lot of cold air, and it just kind of makes the whole main floor cold.
But at the same time, a lot of these students that I've found have a much more sophisticated and mature and wise approach to these sorts of global challenges. A lot of the questions that come up in terms of what can they do to make good decisions to help influence these processes in their everyday lives.
Nina,
yeah.
The water temperature in this kitchen is 140 degrees.
Oh yeah, that's a little high.
Yeah.
And normally it's like 120 to 125 degrees, so we see like 150, so it's good to know.
So this is very hot. It's almost too hot to touch.
And there's a large group of people within the U.S. public that are largely dismissive or ignore these issues. And this can make sense. Again, this is a long-term issue that requires a lot of resources. There are more immediate things to worry about. In and of itself, it makes it the very kind of problem that's the most difficult to resolve.
And so we have 150 down here, 140 upstairs, and it's probably going to be 135 all the way upstairs.
It's difficult to resolve individually. It's difficult to resolve just within one community or one political system. And that's part of the challenge. But it really is up to us to be making individual decisions.
Do you already have like a level of wet water stripping on
Yeah,
there?
yeah, it's just so worn out.
Yeah.
How to better communicate with people to understand the importance of this issue is one of the consistent questions that gets discussed within the communities in which I'm involved with research and teaching.
I think all the numbers regarding anything concerning like population and climate, I think we're just getting used to it as a generation.
We're numb to the number 7 billion. I don't think number 7 billion registers with kids as it should. That number should scare kids.
The research that I've done has shown that through mass media that a lot of the fear messaging can raise awareness but can alienate people to take action. When mass media are presenting these stories in particular ways, it shapes the way that everyday people decide what are good decisions to make, whether to make any decision at all on this or whether this is someone else's problem.
Scare tactics work to a degree, but it's also coming across as like a person, you know, and being more of a teacher instead of a disciplinarian. Because you can, if you try to enforce people and an ideology on people, especially young people, they reject that notion. They really do. They don't like that. Put it in?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. It's a really great job because, you know, we come into students' housing and we talk to people and we try to educate them on. I love talking about population. I'll talk about population, I'll talk about energy, or I'll talk about water usage or any of this stuff. It's all involved, it's all connected. We're all people, we all live in the same society.
And so in order to reframe these issues as a collective struggle, as well as something that then permeates all aspects of our life, I think is a positive step forward.
Not so much left there, is there?
We need to educate global citizens, young people who know about themselves, who know about the needs of the planet. I'm not talking about creating armies of Mother Teresa's here, right? I'm talking about people who are willing to do well by doing good.
Vous avez tout perdu, tout perdu.
I became really interested in this intersection of structural engineering, construction management, and then also sustainable community development. This project meshes all those three together.
There was a need to develop a program to train young Americans to think more globally, to look at the big picture, coming up with solutions that are based on appropriate and sustainable technology, solutions that are quite different from the traditional solutions that we have here in the developed world. And that's a challenge.
We're taking a block and compressing it, and then we will build a typical masonry wall out of the compressed earth block. They are a mix of clay, sand, cement, and water. The soil that we use is from the Crow Indian Reservation in Montana, and their clay comes from the Bighorn Mountains. They mine it from the mountains up there, and the sand comes right off the reservation. We're doing this research on what has been called a new technology, but it's really not a new technology. They've been building with dirt and soil for thousands of years, and those structures are still standing. Well, the hope with the Crow project is that we can provide them with a home that's going to last. They stay warm or cool, depending on the outside temperatures. It's a lot of thermal mass, so it's not going to perform the same way as a typical wood-framed house. The argument is that it would perform better.
Einstein had a great quote to say that problems cannot be solved with the same level of thinking that created them. And I think that what we see today is young people coming up on the radar screen with a new mindset, and I'm glad to see that.
So these houses are more sustainable than a timber-framed house because everything that you're using to build the house is right there on site. If you're lucky, you've got a good enough soil that you can dig your basement and make the blocks out of that soil. The goal is to get away from the timber framing and the concrete and steel just because those practices may not be sustainable enough.
One of the best ways to be sustainable and green is really to just go back to the earth. It'll be interesting to investigate solutions that are both economical and sustainable.
To me, appropriate and sustainable technology is a technology that is owned by the people, understood by the people, that can be fixed by the people, and a technology that creates jobs.
In this theater, where the world is a stage, it takes many different approaches, many different offerings, many different commitments and levels of commitment from all of us in order to be able to address this.
I think a lot of the changes that we need to make as a global family now, we think of as being kind of a bummer. But I have to say that I think that a lot of these changes that we have to make are going to bring us more joy and more connection to each other and to our Earth.